Joining me now to discuss that story further is Jason Unruh, a political commentator from Ontario. Jason, thank you for being with us. Why is this happening? Is there more to it than anger at vaccine mandates? And with the signals coming from the opposition, is this going to challenge Trudeau's career?
I think that this is going to be a major thing for the Trudeau government. Basically, there have been documents revealed and people have come forward saying that a movement like this had been planned as far back as last year as an attempt by the Conservative Party to attack the Liberal Party for having won the election. At the time, it was believed that the Conservatives had more momentum than they've had in recent decades, particularly with the disaster of the Stephen Harper government, and that this was going to be the time to take down Trudeau, take down the Liberal Party, but that was not the case. So this is much of their backlash. I mean, when you see people from the Conservative Party openly backing these protests, some of the smaller backbenchers, some of them only now recently denouncing it. When you have conservative groups funneling money into this protest, when you have white supremacist organizations like Odin Soldiers, you have QAnon conspiracy theorists, and you have essentially all the leftist parties in the country denouncing this as essentially a fascist movement, particularly the far left, the more Marxist variety, have all rejected this movement as attempts are made to try to justify it by saying this is about working measures, this is about things, etc., bodily autonomy, and all of that. But really, this is an astroturfed, like the first world version of a color revolution, where one party is really just trying to oust another by using a lot of hateful rhetoric, which is why there's a lot of racism coming out of these groups, why there have been assaults against minority. There have been stealing food from homeless people by trying to force soup kitchens to feed people who are essentially large owners of companies, etc. They're now using children as shields to block the bridges between the two countries, most of which the biggest victim of this has been heavy industry in the country, which has been struggling for some time, particularly since the creation of the NAFTA agreement. And this is all much hurting the economy to a point where basically the upper elites in the party and now the ruling elite, the very highest of capitalists, are agreeing that this is causing too much damage. It's okay when they're just hurting people or yelling, but when they start damaging the profits of the elite, then it becomes a problem that maybe the beast that they created has gotten out of hand.
Mm-hmm. Jason, the big media corporations are also denouncing this, let me call it a movement. They're now going along with the government to paint this as a hate event. Is that what it really is?
I think it very much is. I mean, much of the ideas behind the vaccine mandates are simply fraudulent. For example, Trudeau has no power to change the vaccine mandate in Canada. Vaccine mandates, the operation of universal health care, and also a lot of the safety, health and safety measures are done on a provincial level, which Trudeau wouldn't have any jurisdiction over. It wouldn't be something he could do. And if he did, he'd be violating a part of some of the checks and balances that were created to keep a division between the provincial and the federal level on certain issues. And if he were to start to mandate them, then they'd be screaming that he was becoming a totalitarian monster. But these vaccine mandates, and you would need the permission of the U.S. government to not have a vaccine, which they don't do. So they're attacking Trudeau for two things, particularly on the vaccine issue, which he has no power to do. He could talk to the president, but he certainly can't make the president do anything. And I think we've seen from many of the actions of the people on the street for assaulting a security guard trying to protect a soup kitchen in Ottawa and then yelling racial slurs at him for being a person of color, for many of the swastikas, Confederate flags that appear at a Canadian rally, and which doesn't really make much sense to me, but I guess the sentiment is there.
And this has been going for almost 2 weeks, and the truckers are resolved to continue. And the government is now saying that it's weighing all options. What are those options?
Well, I sincerely doubt that the military is going to be sent in to sweep these people off the street. That's not the way Canada has been for some time, although we were not above doing that in the past. It seems like since this is largely a a ruling class, particularly the conservative element of the ruling class, created movement, they're going to be treated with kid gloves, as they certainly have had. If this movement were about native peoples asking for clean water to drink, the police would have been sent in a long time ago to shut it down, and they'd probably end up killing a few people. But because this is mostly from upper class people, not truck drivers, because how would they be paying their bills right now if they weren't driving? And other reasons that this is like a boss's strike, where many of the trucking company owners, not the actual drivers themselves, who are getting behind this. But I think in terms of things, I fear Trudeau may be close to capitulating, because he did have a meeting today with Biden about the vaccine mandate for cross-border issues.
Jason, one more thing I want to discuss with you before I let you go. About $9 million in donations were collected for the Freedom Convoy, but the crowdfunding platform GoFundMe blocked it, calling the truckers' protest an occupation, and saying it would distribute the funds to charities of its own choosing, but then again was forced to return the donations. Isn't that arrogant?
That is a bit of an arrogant move on their part, but they certainly do have the right to be concerned that the money was going to an organization that was known for carrying out racism. You know, that's not good for your corporate image, and it's not good for human beings in general. And there's a lot of questions where a lot of this money is coming them. Some of them coming from overseas. One of their Facebook groups was found to actually be a farm in Bangladesh. So they have a good reason to be concerned, but they should have refunded the money directly to those who had donated it, rather than trying to take the money somewhere else. I can see why GoFundMe would be concerned if this comes out to be something that gets classified as terrorism or an insurrection. That makes them liable for having been a part of its funding. So I can see where they were coming from.